So when you came up with the series originally, did you want it? When did you decide it was going to be multiple books? Did you want to keep it as one flat out, or did you?
Never
really
occurred
knew?
to me. There was too much material to keep it in one. Always going to be four from the moment that I decided that it was freshman year. It was only logical to keep it separate books.
So when given that this idea originated about 5 years ago, how much of your material were the classes that you taught previously to that? Were you still citing those for material for this book, or were you really thinking about it in your subsequent classes?
In subsequent classes, I was kind of thinking about it, and so what happened is I turned from being a writer from experience to a writer of observation. So all of a sudden, conversations became more heightened. I became aware of movements, of the little intricate details that actually make scenes. So I had enough experience by then, and sometimes things just pop in the classroom, and some may or may not make their way into the narrative.
So when you're assessing the general movements and you're observing your students, what is the behavior that you look for good characters?
Quirky stuff.
Quirky
stuff. And, depends on the character, I guess I should say. So highly intelligent answers, yes. Clothing styles, or not necessarily the way they look, but what they say in class is incredibly important, and trying to reinvent and at least replicate that dialogue in some way.
Have you ever had a student that you didn't think would make a good character and then read one of their papers and changed your mind?
I don't know, because
Or are you usually pretty good at pegging it, I would imagine.
The characters that I've created thus far are all types that I've already known, and sometimes I'll create a character perhaps from a type that I don't know, but I'll discover that character on campus somewhere. I'll say, oh, well, that's that person.
Okay, so if you were to, what is your favorite kind of student to teach? Not necessarily, intelligent ones or ones that do hard work.
Ones that care, the ones that are passionate about their education and want to learn. If you don't want to learn and you're not open to challenging yourself, very difficult time in the classroom. We're going to have a very difficult time in the classroom because I want a student who wants to learn, as all teachers do. That's all we want.
So I remember you saying, actually, it was about the cell phone policy, and we were all pretty scared about the cell phone policy because how this generation is. We're glued to it. So you said, if you're not going to share and you're not going to waste my time and you're not going to waste my passions on this class, have you had, I think there was a lot of passion clearly in this room, so how do you think that those students who were here tonight actually fed into the experience that you just had?
Well, I think that they were passionate about it because many of them were a part of it. So there's some dimension to every former student who was in that room. There's some dimension to some character in the book because I remember the good ones, and that's who I write for. I write for the ones who inspire me.
Has there been a student who you've really wanted to use as a character, but it was just too risque,
yes,
and you couldn't do it? And I'm assuming you can't. I would love for you to talk about that, but I'm assuming you
can't
get
say.
into legal trouble.
Can't
say.
I think there's always one, but to write it genuinely would be to have that person recognize, and the guise of fiction does not necessarily protect you. So, but yes, I see characters all the time that I go, wow, he'd make a perfect scene in a book, but it would be too obvious.
How can you tell if a character is going to be a major character or a minor character?
Don't know sometimes. I knew Kate is going to be major, but I'll take the character of Seda, who's a very sexually provocative character.
One of your former students mentioned that. I've asked what her favorite minor character was,
right,
and that was her answer, actually.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Seda was not supposed to be a major character, and she developed, and she took a turn in the narrative that I didn't see coming when I was writing her, and I'm in it for the long haul, Seda. She's a good character to write. She's fun to write, and I think readers have a love-hate relationship with her.
Okay, so have there been, it seems as though just generally based on being in your class, there's not really a time where you feel like you're working. It seems like you're actually enjoying yourself, but has there ever been a chapter that you've just wanted it to go somewhere and you just kind of had to adapt, or you had to just change the whole scope, and then everything after that obviously would have to change too, because you can't just isolate one thing and just pick it, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you the chapter that was the hardest chapter of the first book to write was first semester chapter. I believe it's chapter 7, the Spanish chapter 101. Hardest one to write. I couldn't get the thread. I couldn't get the material together, and I struggled with it. And the more I struggled with it, the more distant it became. But soon, I was able to find Spanish Moss, and then this character Rowano and his sister Isabella, and those threads started working together. And sometimes it just happens like that, which it does.
Are there any times where you want a character to go one place and organically it just happens to go somewhere else?
All the
and
time.
what is that like?
It's mind blowing, and you get into this writing zone, and there were a couple of times where I've sat down and I said, I'm in this zone and I'm going to write this character today, and she or he is going to go this way, and then 3 hours later I don't know what time it is, I don't know what day it is, and the character has completely done a 180 on me, and I don't even know that character anymore, and I have to get to know that character because that's the way they wanted to go. And then I'll look back and say, wow, I think I'll go with that because that's an interesting storyline, or at least I think it is, in my opinion.
So jumping back to just today, not necessarily the book as by and large, what was the moment that you think was not necessarily a crowning achievement, but just something, obviously the whole event came together and it was fantastic, but what was something that stood out to you, either a minor detail or something major, just anything?
That's a good question. Standing in the back of the room when the whole thing started and watching it all take place. That was great. Watching and seeing people smile and eyes wide open and taking it all in and realizing that this is 5 years of planning and a lot of photography and a lot of writing coming together, and just sharing it with everyone in that room.
So if people call you Spawn of Satan, I would assume that Lucifer, I guess, was an incredible educator, because that's the only way that
people
I
are
can
still
imagine
talking about him. People are still talking about him. So yes, I would say so.
So have you scoured Rate My Professor recently? Have you
I
seen any
have
developments?
looked. Matt forced me to look recently. They're
Oh,
not
really?
very nice. They are not nice at all.
Well, I'm imagining that those students deserved whatever they got.
Well, it is what happens when, as John says, you bust people for cheating. But anyway, goes with the territory.
I remember the first essay I wrote for you, I actually got a D- on, and
I'm very sorry. Well, am I
no,
sorry
don't
about that? I don't know.
Because I remember sitting down with you, and you would say, you went through paragraph by paragraph, even line by line, and at the end of the paper, I was like, you know
Just
what?
for all fairness,
this is a D-.
should we talk about your topic of agrarian tendencies from the Greeks to the modern period in 5 pages? Hello.
You know, I'm interviewing
I
you,
remember
not
that.
the other way around.
That's how much that scarred me.
Anyway, well, I think that by and large, I personally have not read this yet. I have not enough time to read it, but now that I have it, I'm excited to do so, because just judging by the amount of energy that was here tonight, I really think that you have definitely the passion that you've inspired in your students is clear across the board, and you will definitely, I'm excited for the work that you're still about to do.
Thanks, John. I appreciate
And your
that.
husband did a great job setting all this up. This was pretty killer. Top notch.